Kim, that's the name of our protagonist. He was 27 years old, and he was a natural awakener. He's an awakened that was born with more strength than the others. He is already 9 years old, transporting hunted monsters, and that was to pay off the debt of his parents, who ended up dying in a mysterious accident. But then you ask yourself how he had so much willpower to do this for 9 years. That's because he had a dream of becoming a professional hunter. He ends up getting close to 2 guys, and they asked him what it's like to save so much money to become a hunter, and the PR explains that he had looked for good, cheaper hunter academies, which probably don't exist, right? Commented that it had been 50 years since the professional hunter exam was created, and attending a hunting academy was practically an obligation for anyone who is awakened to the case. And the Silver knew that he had to find it since the real hunters were teaching experiences and knowledge, since normally hunters have to risk their own lives to learn. Thanks to this, the huge gap between the trained and untrained was very big. He ends up looking at his cell phone, and he was happy because he had finally managed to put together the money. He managed to save enough to attend exactly 1 year of classes at a fitness academy for hunters. And he was all happy saying that he would love to go to a better gym, but it was very expensive, and that place wasn't that bad either. But then Prota finds something very interesting, and he wonders if that was an ad. It was written that it was the Sex Academy, and 3 windows ended up appearing, all 3 blue. The first said that the paradigm of the trade cut to an interview with a student who had blonde hair. He had passed the 9th E-class swordsmanship exam. In this, he registered without expectations, but it ended up being the best decision of his life. Another interview with an old man, and he ended up passing 5th place in the Sage's dwarf exam, and so on. There were many other interviews, and at the end, he was saying that he could also become an obvious transcended. Prota is like, what kind of crazy ad was this? My partner, he is in shock. He starts to see it and asks what was wrong with the teachers' names. Each name was a bit strange, and he ends up seeing little monkeys. It looks like Kong. He said it was a pleasure to meet him because he was a great sage from heaven, and his original name was Sun Wukong. Oh, I said it, Sun Wukong. He explains that his main weapon is a staff, and staffs and spears are not fundamentally very different. They are similar, but the monkey said it was very difficult for him to just explain, and that's why he would show it. While Prota spoke that the lecture was quite normal considering the concept, he starts using that weapon and said that then it was just do those crazy spins and end up throwing an attack. You wonder what that was because the mountain had disappeared out of nowhere. It's not possible for an attack to be that strong, right? Conclusion that it could be CGI because it was not possible how a normal Cazador would do this. It could be a hunter rank S. Then a window appears from the Azul system, asking if he would like to sign up for the lecture because if he gave this talk, he would obtain the DGP of a great sage, and he had the S rank. I think the PR is looking at the screen and is very attentive, and obviously, he ends up clicking on register. But a message appears Miro saying he was not a member and asks if he would like to register for a new account. The system said that he would be charged for member registration. In addition, the registration fee would also be calculated taking Prota's accident into account, and he realizes that it would also cost money to make an account. But he didn't even know at least the price, and 40,000 ends up appearing soon after. After registration, the lecture rates may vary depending on your situation. But then Prota takes his cell phone far away, saying, "Bro, I'm not going to pay, this must be a scam, it's not possible." A guy ends up asking if he's going to sign up to a gym because, according to the guy, no. I admired that he seemed to be in a good mood that day and even wanted to know where he was checking in, while the PR explains that it was a place called the Arc Hunters Academy, and he heard that they have a lot of good teachers there. The man just kept telling him not to forget the old friends, that is, everyone there, and after he became famous because he believed in Prota's potential. Our Proton even ends up offering a proposal if he could take care of the monsters he catches, and the guy starts to make fun saying that he would finally be able to deal with a dragon. But Prota joins in the joke, but still said that not only was he a dragon, He would let him play football with a lit skull. We are explained that one day someone said the following: "Life is like a long-running comedy, but up close it is a real tragedy, and something very bad ends up happening there. Someone shouts the name of the person to get out of there, and in the end, to be able to truly laugh, you must be able to bear your pain." The scene cuts to a doctor saying that the nerves were really bad because there was necrosis in Prota's leg, and it looks like his bones were broken. They ended up mixing with the nerves during healing since he has faster regeneration than a normal person since he was an awakened person. Furthermore, to improve the surgery, it would cost 40,000, and in the end, PR was in a horrible position. He said that's why you need to be able to look to the future, and he has been looking to the future for 9 years now. Look at his situation, everything he saved was spent on his surgery, and at that moment, all he had left was just 3,000, which in this case was the Manchu gentleman who gave it to him. Prota ends up seeing a very cute little guy, and he comes to the conclusion that his mentor's name is his mentor. The little man even confirmed that that was right. He was Prota's mentor, and his name was your mentor. My God, what a mess. He said that he was his mentor, and he was his mentor. No problem, bro, that was bad. Lastly, he says that his name was Mentor, and that's why he bro parent. Prota ends up asking if he was the mentor he knew, in this case, Odysseus's teacher, and then Odysseus's mentor. Prota ends up saying that he really knew, and that Odysseus was the hero of Greek mythology. Odysseus then begins to say that Odysseus was his first student he was in charge of, and it has been a long time since he became a transcended. He even commented that Wudsu still hired him from time to time, and PR wonders what that means. Bro, he didn't understand anything else, but PR's teacher still keeps saying that anyway. Their academy taught those who want to transcend the limits of their own race and ask him if he is an academy for transcended and non-hunters. PR's mentor ends up feeling offended by him comparing a transcended academy with hunters as they were on a completely different level. But still, continues saying that S-rank hunters are still very strong. But his teacher puts the screen in his face and said that his instructors are capable of taking down hunters using just their fingertips. I asked him to provide and fill out that form, and a search appears to create a personalized course for new students. The question was for him to select the field he wanted to transcend and had combat, production, medicine, mind arts, and others. They begin to dialogue while the teacher explains that he could become what he wanted so to determine his current ability and tendency. He had to at least answer honestly because he couldn't go back, and he ends up scoring a fight, but he realizes that something was wrong. The teacher even asks if there was a problem. The prod explained that he didn't know what to select in the second option. It was to select the current age level. And PR's mentor said it was normal because a lot of people were hesitant about that place. He could simply choose the one that literally describes as he can do it, and he even uses an explanation. Will he be able to plow a large plane into a field with a juice seriously? And Pra said no. How about easily dividing a large mountain with a single attack? Probably not, I just don't think so. And the mentor was talking to a doubtful guy that this meant he wasn't capable of pulling one off either. Mountain, but our Proton simply responds with another question. It wasn't strange for someone to do that because it wasn't normal. The prosthesis mentor asks how he managed to register at his gym. He was a person totally common, but then he told him not to worry, the Sex Academy would never expel the member. Once a member, always a member. And he said that now you just had to keep responding. After a while, the PR was dead while his mentor said that he had done a good job. In total, there were 108 questions that Prota had to answer all of them. The mentor commented that he had a free pass, and he just had to recommend some lectures necessary. They would talk about the rest after analyzing his profile, but his method of combat preferred is the spear. For a spearman, instead of a mana cultivation, the technique of cultivation that Eastern may be better. The great sage instructor of heaven is a great for the basics, but considering he can't even uproot mountains, it's too advanced for him. He thought this would be better for the free pass lecture to appear in 2 system windows. the mentor to say that he was just not there. Injured, but he was also bleeding emotionally, and all he had to do was start that lecture from instructor Siddhit. Boy, whose name is Siddhartha Gautama, my God in heaven. The weird name was Buddha, and the mentor said it was correct. Even though he himself said he wasn't this guy, he was literally known as the Buddha by his students. He says that the Buddha is one of the instructors famous for his mindset talk, a necessary subject for the sex exam. He should require a ton of money, but he was so adamant about saving poor souls. Then the system window appears, asking if he would like to sign up for the talk, and upon completion of that talk, he would get the steadfast heart Hank SSS. The prot still didn't know what this unshakable heart was, and the mentor said that's why the lecture instructor was considered necessary. Only the unshakable heart can let him break through most of the transmission fields, and that's why even if he looks like he's going to lose his mind, he just needs to watch everything. But then Prada gets in the middle of losing his head, and the mentor simply says he would get in touch again after having analyzed his profile. PR couldn't even make him wait, and he said he would have to take a look. Alia appears a button for him to play until the Buddha appears. He starts asking, "Where do you think this world exists?" PR is surprised that that was actually the real Buddha. The Buddha keeps saying, "The word I didn't exist, therefore I don't exist, and if there is nothing to compare, how can it be one that cannot be defined exists? Therefore, my God, I will not continue." No. Guys, just ignore a lot of crazy questions. At the end, the PR was dead while a blue system window appeared, showing the progression of the lecture was 0.6%. A week ends up passing, and the doctor was very surprised by Prota's recovery speed. He said that even though he is awakened, it was very fast. That regeneration is the first time he saw something happening like this after 30 years as a doctor. PR explained that it was not his imagination. Thanks to the Buddha's talk, his heart felt calm, even accelerating his recovery. He was only at 13% progress, but this progress was very strong and effective. He wonders what would happen if he, by chance, one day reached 100%. He ends up telling the doctor that everything was fine while he thought that the sex academy was the real deal. Looking at 2 system windows, he said he could move his body now. He wonders why he doesn't experience Chiron Lecture's metamorphosis of Class A. It was a lower class compared to the unshakable heart, but that's not because Class A didn't mean that it was bad. A guy appears saying he was Chiron. He is a centaur with the torso of a human and the lower part of a horse. But there is also Hercules, Theseus, Achilles, etc. He is the teacher of almost all the heroes of Greek mythology. He begins to say that the focus of that lecture was to prepare students for a state in which they can. As you get to the initial stages of the transaction, you begin to think that the real Chiron wasn't as surprising as he imagined while the PR was calmly lying down watching the lecture. Chiron simply said that he was going to start, and there was one more thing. He simply shouted, saying for him to get up if you call him a police officer. It's okay. Silver obviously ends up getting scared because he knew that it was with him because he was lying down. After that scream, he looked like a fool, and he even fell out of bed with his cell phone. The blue system window appears, saying that the individual task was available today, and after calculating the causes of the student's current level, a suitable task would be given. It was for him to run 30 km, 1,000 squats, 300 push-ups, 300 sit-ups, and 150 pull-ups. The PR was looking at that and said screw him. The level of difficulty they gave is much higher than the daily task. Not to mention the doctor definitely said something like, it's not to make an effort, it's not to do anything. He said that for now, he would just listen to the lecture and start training when he is discharged. But the system warns you have an incomplete task. Do your task. Silver was like, bro, this isn't going to stop. No, bro, it's already bothering me. It got so annoying that it appeared all the time, and it beeps. He starts to think, I think I'm going to do this, right? He was sitting on the bed, saying that this was just a week. He didn't need to try hard, and he should at least listen to the Buddha's talk first. but it appears that the time until the free access expires is 83 days, and he realizes that it had an expiration date. But either way, that gym was a very good gym, and it makes sense that it has had an excess duration. Lectures and the remaining time were 83 days to start. It was probably 90 days, i.e., 3 months straight, and he didn't even know how the academy came about. But he would have to absorb everything and achieve a certain level of understanding to continue to increase the progression of the lecture he attended. But he did not progress a lot, as it was still 13%. He kept watching, and he thought that he ended up having to watch the talk again. He watched Buddha's talk for a whole week, but it was still at 13%. He didn't have the confidence to complete the talk in the rest of the 83 days, and the free access means it was just a test. He was already working out for the first time in a long time, and for this exact time, he didn't even have a reason to work out until that moment. But he still did it for the last 9 years besides working, carrying monsters like the hunters killed them. Since the monsters they carried weighed around 70 kg, he didn't feel the need to work out separately. Furthermore, he started to say that he wasn't training yet. Know how to use mana. He was still awakened. He had confidence in his strong body. He ends up doing 300 push-ups, but when he was resting and decided to look on the app, it was only 81 push-ups, and he wonders why he only counted 81 instead of 300. He starts doing the push-ups again, and it didn't change. It continued and didn't change. He wonders how come he wasn't counting. He starts doing sit-ups, squats, and he said it didn't make sense. In the end, he finishes laying down on the floor, saying that this was really crazy, and he couldn't do it. He didn't have to do this every day. That was it. It was already naughty. Some days pass by, and an old lady says, "Carol, my brother, he had really improved his body, and even asks if he would exercise again." She even commented that he was trying too hard while the PR was there. The news appears that at around 5 a.m., the 4-star monster Mutt suddenly appeared in the city center of his, and the association declared that the Baram Mutt was in a state of deep sleep, and it was determined that the monster body delivery service was unaware of this and took shorts to the city center when he woke up. This situation could have caused a large number of deaths, but they resulted in an awakening that was nearby, intervened, and was able to prevent any loss of life from being caused. The awakened one is a cadet from the Gen Academy. The lady said that those hunters saved lives again. They really are big people, and now that she was thinking about it, they caught Prota's attention because he should also be an awakened, right? Prota said yes, he was, so she started calling him Hunter. Well then, he would probably appear on TV like that in the future too, but for he knew it wasn't like that, and he asked Grandma there if she really thought anyone could show up on TV, but a guy who was there got a little irritated. He said that these days it was very difficult to become a professional hunter. Looking at him, he said he didn't even look like he was a cadet yet, so he was working out to at least have a hope of becoming a hunter. Asking him to just give up wasn't for him to waste his youth on something that cannot happen. Prota remembers everything he did for 9 years. He gets a little upset and angry. He squeezed his fist while Grandma was fighting with that man, and he commented that he himself would decide what to do with his life. The man gets very angry, and Prota continues, saying that it was for the man to mind his own business. Prota ends up leaving while the man keeps stamping his foot on the floor and talking a lot of things. Silver thought he was the Transcension Academy cadet. He was able to fully feel the effects from last week's lectures, and at Transcension Academy, being a hunter wasn't impossible. He started running again because he was definitely going to become a hunter. And this man just served as fuel for Prota while another woman said she hated being a hunter. What's the goal of creating a gym? She was fighting a very big beast as she kept saying that things cost money. They didn't even have cadets yet. That was bad. All that boredom was going to kill her, and she ended up crushing that monster with her sword. After a while, finally being at his house, he was hospitalized for practically 2 whole weeks, and he commented that even though his house is small, it was better than being in the hospital. Furthermore, he starts to think that it had been about a year until the hunter exam, and he wonders how much was left in his account because he had spent a lot of money. He really was out of money. He was hard. But then he ends up taking his cell phone quickly and saying that now that he thought he finished his daily tasks that day and he wasn't able to do them because it took more than a day to finish. He said that if it was today, then maybe he would go down and a window would end up appearing in the system, asking if he would register for the next lecture. That half-horse man said that it seemed that PR already had enough strength to start playing at that moment, and therefore, since he has the ability to play, he should go play, right? In this case, the first step as a transcendent was perception. Then the system window notifies that the progression of the lecture was 5-7%. One day ends for the next morning. The prot was in front of apparently someone who was superior to him, like a boss. The guy said that he must have a good face to be appearing there out of nowhere, and he was letting PR know that if something unpleasant like the last time happened again, the next time, his neck would be cut. He honestly said he didn't want to be there, but he had no choice. He was out of money, and seeing that he was letting it stay, he at least feels a little busy about it. He said it was that old man's way of being boring like that, and in the end, the problem was always money. He had to work to have money because otherwise, he would starve to death. Furthermore, if he didn't finish Instructor Shiren's daily tasks, he wouldn't be able to listen to any upcoming lectures. He wonders if he should warn the lectures that he was feeling unwell or something like that. He also starts to remember what the Chiron instructor said, which in this case was about perception. There are 5 senses that have an absurd role in combat: vision, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, and that is why they are called the 5 senses. While the guy was approaching him from behind, normally, the 5 senses go through a process of perception, recognition, judgment for each stimulus, but this process was very slow. Chiron explained why he would be thinking about useless things, and that's why he would teach the method to reduce this process as much as possible. Something completely different from the 5 senses, it's hidden, the 6th sense, intuition. The guy ends up coming up behind Prota, calling him Kim and asking for satisfaction because the Silver guy left the hospital and didn't even warn anything. But then Silver dodges that slap that would hit them both, like, what happened here, bro? The guy even thinks that the guy had some eyes in the back of his head or something like that. In the end, Chiron was happy because it certainly worked out. Besides, the guy asks if the Prota would be okay because if it was 3 of those, it should weigh around 300 kg. But Prota said everything was great. He was feeling good and could put everything up there. He starts walking around with some pieces of meat, as if it wasn't obvious that everyone is surprised. The old man thought that seeing how he managed to walk like that, it seems like he was fine while someone else was shouting for everyone to give up. A pause after that, Prota starts to think that that was very strange because he was feeling as if he was exploding with strength. He even squeezed his fist. He started doing squats with those meats, and he could probably do the daily tasks there, right? Besides, he wouldn't have much time after the work, and that's why he would try to enjoy it a little. He starts looking at his cell phone to see if those squats he did counted for him. He realized that one squat counted as 3 because he was carrying a heavier weight, and he was already starting to do some weight. Evil plans to do that while a load of stuff appeared on top of his head. Man, God, the old man is already starting to call Prota to take a break too. But PR didn't want to know. He said that was a lot of crap. He would carry everything there and said that they didn't need to take it and nothing else. The guy was desperate because PR was like a crazy person walking weird, exercising with that piece of meat. Prota simply comes to the conclusion that he would do the tasks together there with non-separate work. He takes the pieces of meat and started doing push-ups and said that the heavier the weight, the more the counter increased, meaning that he could earn money and save time since he would do it the same way. These activities are a perfect example of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. After Silver arrives home, he said he felt like he was going to die, but at least it was worth it. He made money and was much more efficient than doing the tasks alone, but it was still quite tiring. He also made fun of the old man's face because he was surprised to see him doing that. But he said it really was weird to be holding pieces of monster meat. That wasn't normal. He stood up and said that at least he told everything. He gained a lot of time since he had finished that day's tasks, and it's still 10 o'clock. Even after watching the 2 lectures, the 2 windows appeared. Zion's lecture progress was 9.1% and Buddha's talk had a progress of 2.5%. He commented that it was good that he managed to finish quickly, and it would really be a waste of time if he didn't manage to figure this out. He ends up seeing if he should watch the lectures again, but starts to think that maybe it would be better to get another lecture to watch. Maybe it's not a bad idea. He begins to look for another lecture because there were several other free ones. Since normal lectures cost money, he should get a free lecture so he can attend. He finally thinks you might be strong enough to get mountains out of the ground like this. The instructor was Xiang Yu. PR asks if this Xiang Yu would be the homogeneous king. The homogeneous king Xiang Yu, after appearing in the legend of Shu Iran, became well known as a man with overwhelming power. He thought that there was a reason for the proverb, "He who can beat 10,000," since this proverb was created because of this man. The system window ends up appearing, asking if he would register for the new selected lecture. If he accepted, he would learn the art of the spear of pulling mountains. The guy, in this case, the professor of the lecture, asks if he would want to learn the art of the spear. Those who are watching that lecture are rubbish people who don't even know the basics. He starts making fun of him, but in the end, he said that anyway he would teach them, and said that at that moment, it was just for them to swing their spears around. It was to embed the concept of a spear in their bodies and senses as well. After his students did this, it was just to go back to it. The window appears that the daily personal task has arrived, and another system window says that later, to calculate the causality of the student's current level, an appropriate task would be delivered. The task was to swing a weapon resembling a spear 5,000 times. PR is even surprised by this. He said a few words, but what was it? That lecture was all crazy, and he wonders why all the daily tasks are so crazy. The scene ends. Cutting to a woman, she was passing by while the old proto-boss said that in their business, they never had any accidents thanks to regulations, management, and safety. He commented that there would be nothing to worry about her. This was the B-rank hunter called Park Sayan. She ends up asking if he knew about the shorts accident that happened a little while ago. If she has already confirmed everything, there could be something she missed, and she wanted to make sure to inspect carefully. The guy said yes, but it was clear. People started talking quietly, saying he was practically on his knees for that girl. Proto was there listening to the conversation of the extras who said that she would be the granddaughter of the sword star called Minchu Park. It ends up happening that 100 years ago, he was the tight one who was active when the concept of the portal was still beginning to be created. Different from that moment when they had systematic knowledge about awakened, the monsters of that time were more brutal, and these monsters infested. His was a time when human survival was not guaranteed, and his chance of survival was almost zero. But Minchu Park ended up saving the people who were there. He was active as awakened at that time, and he was already very strong, even though he woke up there at that time. He was one of the people who brought civilization back to the world. He was the true savior of the world, a hero. Time has passed, and he can be an old man now, but he was still very strong. He could even compete on a global level, and Proto was thinking that this was strange, but as it wasn't his business, he continued training with the monsters. The girl even looked at him and asks the old man what that guy was doing, while the old man asked her not to call him. And he's been like this for a week now. She starts to spend ignoring Proto, wondering if there's something wrong with his head, while Proto was there. Ooh, let's go. 45, 46, ooh. The old man just watched while the guy warned that he would throw the body there. Then a giant hand appears out of nowhere, and the old man asks how long he would continue doing that. Proto responds that he had a good reason for that, but the old man didn't understand anything and said that the good reason was his egg. My God, the old man is crazy. He has few ideas, but in the end, the old man ends up smiling. the monster starts to move, and Proda immediately feels the monster simply waking up even though it was all messed up. Proda starts shouting for the old man to get out of there as quickly as possible. The scene cuts to that girl. She was taking a long sigh, thinking that finally she escaped, and was definitely not a big fan of that work leader. He only knew how to flatter her, etc. She wonders how long she would have to stand there while the man watched her. That man thought that she was the granddaughter of the Sword Star. She was just listening. It was obvious that you could hear those guys talking about her. Although the Sword Star is revered by people as the hero, to her, he was just a name and a heavy label that follows her around. Even though she has had direct education from her grandfather, since when she started walking, the wall called Sword Star was very high, and she didn't have the possibility of overcoming it. For her, she had been constantly compared to her hero grandfather, and her original dream was to become a teacher. She even tried to explain to her grandfather that she wanted to, but he said he didn't want to know, and she wasn't even supposed to comment further about it. In the end, she couldn't live the normal life she wanted to because she was Estrella da Espada's granddaughter. When she tried to teach the class, the staff thought that the one who would teach them was the Sword Star, not that girl over there. She even explained to her grandfather that she didn't have anything to do with it, and she was just the instructor. But it turns out that it didn't matter much. When it was revealed that the Academy of Hunters she established would not have the Sword Star as an instructor, everyone was disappointed. They lost interest and left. She was left there alone. People signed up not because of her, but because of the name of the Star of the Sword. Walking around at the construction site, she thought that any cadets that were left, as if they had been scared away by their grandfather. Because of that, no one knew about the Hunter Academy. But if she had at least one real cadet, then she ends up looking back. The old man was talking to everyone to run because there was a monster there. Proda was already prepared to try to help his old friend. He got a question about why the manticore he brought came up out of nowhere. It was supposed to be dead. The old man shouted to Jun to run away because he wasn't supposed to try anything, and he wasn't supposed to worry. He was just going to run. But Proda knew that if he ran, the old man would die. He would definitely die. Also, a normal person could never beat the monster. Even an awakened person who doesn't know how to use a weapon would have the same fate. Furthermore, the manticore is a 4-star monster that even pro hunters would struggle with. He ends up reminding Cadet of that girl who was there. She wasn't a hunter, but he realizes that if she had been there, it was too late. She should have been somewhere else, and it would take a long time for her to appear. So she had to save her friend. When he thinks he was screwed, he takes an iron bar to simulate a spear. He starts screaming and starts fighting against that monster, telling the old man to run away quickly. But the old man said he wouldn't leave because he would die too. Proda says that if neither of them left, they would both die. He was really shaking with fear. He didn't have the courage to kill the monster, but he needed to buy time until some hunter appeared. He realized that the level of difference between him and the monster was tremendous, and he was very scared to move. He heard the voice. "You are the universe," as he watched the world from where it came from. He realized that this was probably the Buddha talking nonsense like he normally does, but Proda begins to calm down. Apparently, as the Buddha continues telling him to embrace the universe, thinking where he would go from that moment on, Proda starts to feel really calm. His heart, fearful and trembling, was calm as the monster advanced towards him as if it were someone else. He was calm, holding the bar, telling himself to calm down slowly and attack slowly. He didn't need to hurry. He starts to say that he had to leave his actions to his senses, and he ends up really deviating from several blows from the monster. That monster even had a tail like a scorpion. Proda uses his spear to boost his jump and dodge. He just said to leave everything to his senses. But then he ends up finding a weak point, and he wonders if he should attack or not. He ends up remembering how to uproot mountains. It wasn't just about strength. It was a moment of courage. He holds his bar and attacks with all the strength he has. He said that he would now use the power to uproot mountains. A blue energy ends up appearing like lightning, splitting that monster in half. A strong explosion ends up happening in the place until the hunter is left surprised by that energy and asks what was happening. What was that noise? She starts to observe, and Proto was standing there. He really smashed that monster in the middle. Everyone was watching, and Proto is like, "Oh, that's it. It works, doesn't it?" A theme window appears showing the progression rate of Chiron's lecture. He got 10% in it, in addition to getting 6% in Buddha's lecture and 13% in Xianyu's lecture. The girl arrived at the place, wondering what had happened there. A body carrier who is not even a hunter did it alone with that iron bar. She starts to think that this was impossible, but it was obvious that it was possible because it was our Proto. He ends up looking in her direction, but he wasn't looking at her. She ends up calling her grandfather to see if he was okay. The old man and they both start talking, saying he was fine, etc. She just listens, and Proto's boss ends up suddenly appearing. He was worried, but she was kind of saying it wasn't safe there. Everyone there was happy that Proto saved the old man. That was it, bro. He was very strong, while the girl simply said that she had found this was the suitable cadet she wanted. After a while, Proto was going home, saying he was leaving and saying goodbye to everyone. Then he started looking at his phone. The progress rate of the lectures had increased a lot, and he had noticed that it was not even possible to compare it to the other times he was training. He wondered if it was because he caught a manticore or something like that. In this case, the manticore was the monster. Maybe fighting and engaging in real combat was better than him keep training. In other words, the best way to advance in these lectures was to use what he learned in fights. The problem is that he can't get into the Hunter Academy. It was already very difficult for him to get a temporary license, so that's why he couldn't join the raids to kill monsters. He wonders if he would have to save more money and join a Hunter Academy. The girl was after him, and she ended up attracting his attention, asking if he had a minute to talk. Looking at her a little suspiciously, he said that this was the hunter who asked for the work. Possibly it was the Sword Star's granddaughter. Why would someone like her want to talk to him? He was suspicious, but he said she could say yes. She said she would be direct and asked him to go with her to see her grandfather, but Proto simply says he didn't want to. When she was going to say it was, of course, he would accept it. She is surprised that he denied it. She didn't know why he denied it, or simply because he was going to get out of there soon. From there, the girl is in shock, saying that she knew that 31-year-old Xian was listening to this for the first time. A guy wouldn't want to see his grandfather. He was going through such a boring situation that the Proto already knew everything. He said she wanted him to enter her Hunter's Fitness Academy, which did not have any cadets and was basically registered only on paper. The girl is like, "Bro, what the heck? How does this guy know?" Plus, she remembers he did some weird exercises, very different and even in an extremely weakened state, having the fighting ability of just one monster. A 2-star manticore was able to split in half a 4-star manticore. He was clearly trying to become a hunter, and she asked for more time, saying that they could give him everything he needed, the equipment, the good rooms. Although they didn't have instructors, she could help him herself. But the professor said he didn't want to because he didn't need instructions from a Hunter Academy. The girl gets very angry and asks if he would accept if her grandfather was his instructor. The PR said it didn't matter and simply kept refusing. She thinks he was denying the offer to learn from the Sword Star, something that all hunters would like. She said that she couldn't let him escape this time. She starts screaming about the written test. She asks what he would do with it, and she simply shouts, "Written test." She wanted to know what he was going to deal with it, but his cousin said he could deal with something like that alone. He didn't need help. She asks about the raids because, from what she saw that day, he could go on one right now. He knows better that he could go to none without enrolling in a Hunter Academy. She said that if he didn't do that, it would be a waste. But the black guy said it wouldn't be the same if he went to the gym. Only gyms have permissions from the government to distribute temporary licenses. But the girl said that they had the authorization, and if he came to her gym, they would help him get into raids as quickly as possible. Then she realizes that he had stopped walking, and she could argue more now. She starts saying that he needed lessons from a gym, and they could train him very well. Besides, they don't charge anything, etc. Proda asks if she was just asking him to sign up because when there is too much alms, the saint becomes suspicious. To have these advantages, everyone was a bit strange. He asks what he really needed to do. She explains that before passing the exam, a hunter was supposed to participate in competitions at the academy. Wherever he went, it was so that they knew the gym he goes to was hers. PR starts to think that it was really tempting. He could solve all his worries at once, and what he needed to do was not much compared to the advantages he would have. He ends up asking why she wanted him to sign up. She simply says that she saw his true potential and believed in it. Proda begins to think that he liked it. It was a relationship in which the two would have advantages using each other. He ends up introducing himself as King Siu, and she as Seoyeon Park. One day ends up happening, and he was holding his phone. His boss had called him, fighting because he should have done something to that girl there, and it was probably his fault. Proda remembers everything and said he didn't think he would be fired at that moment. He explains to XF that he couldn't have done anything. He even started to blame others because he didn't want his horse in the rain there. But his boss doesn't believe it because King was a scoundrel, but he wouldn't go out for something like that until a dog in the street would laugh about it. According to the boss, he would also ask the Prodas if he was already going to the gym of the hunters. Proda was already practically there. The girl starts calling him and ends up handing over the temporary and spoken license that was issued the night before. Proda begins to think that they were really doubting, but they did it quickly. Even though he didn't become a hunter, he still had a license, and that was the feeling of taking his first step towards his dream. This was just the beginning. He ends up asking if she could teach methods to go to hides. She explained that he wouldn't need the PR until he was in doubt. She showed 3 weapons, or rather 3 spears, and asked him to choose the first comfortable training weapon among those. She starts to give a smile. She was quite happy because she made a reservation and thought he would need to go after a while. They were already in the dungeon, and Proda was killing some rats. He asks why she was following him into the dungeon because they agreed not to meddle in each other's things. She explains that he was the only student from their gym, and they didn't neglect it. She asked him to think of it as a private session, but to students and teachers. Furthermore, she asks if this was her first time in a hide. She asked him to think of her as just a security device. Even though dungeons only have kobolds, he just killed one easily, but he couldn't be distracted. Even if he is a weak monster, the black guy starts to think that kobold is a 2-star monster. This is the perfect place for someone like him who has no experience to start having. Even though he kind of fought against the manticore, the mana defense is very easy to penetrate, and it would be quite easy if the mana attacks were deflected by a transparent barrier. He already deflects one who is trying to attack him by surprise. He starts to think that this was strange. Attacks from someone who does not use mana are effective. He kept hitting the kobolds, and the progress rate windows kept increasing from 06, 04, etc. He was happy because he was looking at his cell phone. It was paying off well, although not as drastically as when he killed the manticore, but it was rising at least. The girl held her sword while Proda thought that he could furthermore gain everything. Proda is even excited. He said it would speed up a little, like he was going to farm experience in games. He starts heading towards those monsters, and the girl knew that Proda was a pretty strange guy from the beginning. But she said that after a while of observing him, his madness surpassed her imagination. She commented on what he was doing was scary while PR was looking at his cell phone, telling him he needed to avoid the Hydra poison at all costs. She commented that since he left the network, he has been staring at the black and empty screen of his cell phone. He even asked her if she wasn't seeing that. She was thinking he was crazy, but actually, only he could see the system. She wondered how many hours he had been staring at the black screen and empty of her cell phone. She said that these problems were stranger than she expected. A cadet without any instruction on his first ride can slaughter kobolds like a hunter experienced with more than 10 years of training. She ends up remembering that when she was inside the dungeon, she commented that if he had nothing to do, he would help her carry the kobolds. PR was carrying 2 with ease and even doing squats for training. He did a strange exercise. He carried the bodies as if it was nothing. She thought in her head that she couldn't keep the fact that he was a student like that hidden from her grandpa. In a strange and talented way, he ended up shouting that it was already past midnight. He hadn't even finished watching all the lectures. She was like, "My God, what have I done in my life, bro?" After a while, Proto was already very happy and shining. He had money for the first time. He won 9,000 in one day. He said that it was very sinister. He just did the transportation and dismantling of the body alone. What really helped, everyone's effort has its advantages. The problem is that this requires a lot of time and effort. He ended up not finishing last night's lectures. He wonders if he should try asking his friend Grandpa to work with him since they would both win. There was also the part that Proto could trust him 100%. That's why he also wanted to maintain contact. There were many advantages. Setting up his own body transportation services for monsters probably wouldn't be a bad idea for either of them. He said that anyway, when he had time, he would send a message. Besides, he had to find a use for his money. What would he do with it? Saving so much money is good, but he wanted to use it intelligently. He helped him make money, increasing the rate of progress of the lectures, but not going up as fast as he expected. When he got the last time with Ball, it didn't even increase practically. He wonders if there is any faster way to get strong. He wanted to be as strong as the great sage of the sky, Sun Wukong. Then he ends up remembering what Sun Wukong was talking about in the lecture that he saw was just an AMRA. Before, he might not have even thought about signing up because he didn't have money. He wanted to see how much it was. A system window appears. The basics of the arts of spear and staff, scatter, grab, and pierce. The instructor was the great sage of the sky, and the system asked if he would like to register for this lecture. If he accepted, he would learn the DAP from the great sage. He gets quite excited about it and asks to register, but the registration fee was $27 million. It's obvious how he would get so much money, so there was no way. He started cursing the system, saying that these guys were all thieves, but it's not like he could do something. He wonders if, by any chance, Transcension Academy comes from some item. There is another thing. If he can't watch the lecture, he should at least buy equipment, right? There really was a store that sold equipment. Training courses created especially by approved students. He is incredibly enchanted with what was there. There were elixirs, shields, spears, many things. Even if they were copies, they are all mythical level equipment that are considered incredible. He didn't know because it was training equipment anyway. For someone like him who doesn't know much about the weapons, they all looked unusual. If the equipment is made by students approved in quotation marks, it may be that they had been raised by Transcendence. He thinks that he could obtain mythical grade items so easily. It was very unexpected from him to think about it. He commented that, for now, the equipment he could use was a spear. He ends up seeing there was a spear of Longinos, which was a copy, but it didn't mean it was weak. He ends up purchasing it. The system warns that it was calculating the casualty rate in order to establish an appropriate price. PR ends up shouting, 68, 69, 70. In the end, the girl ends up seeing Proto herself and wonders what this guy is doing. She even starts to say that he seemed quite desperate that day and asks what had happened. PR thought it would be super expensive. Even a copy would be worth millions in real life. The casualty rate had been calculated at 100,000. But even if it was just only 100,000, he didn't have 100,000. There was no way he had all that money. He was looking at the screen, saying he should have just closed his eyes, taken the loan, and then returned. But he said that in the end, with depression, everything is about money. 100,000 is already very difficult. He can't even imagine when he would get to see the great sage's 27 millionth lecture. The girl asked if he had a minute. She wanted to talk about gym disputes. The teacher said he had already looked at the details. She explained that, as the name suggests, it is a dispute between academies, a competition in which each academy shows its strength. It could be seen as a place to evaluate his level. In addition to the academy level, where he also competes, they are quite varied. The gym competitions are at level 4 of the competition league, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. If he does well during the dispute, he would earn the right to participate in a higher league, allowing the academy to increase the number of subscribers and have authorization from the government. That is why fitness academies don't save resources and send their greatest hopes. Proda said that then she was explaining this because she wanted him to fight. She said he was correct. She wanted him to participate as a representative of her academy, the Dream Academy. Proda starts to think these gym disputes would be a great way to greatly increase his progress in face-to-face and practical fights. At the end of the day, he also wanted the experience. He said it sounded great, and that's why he would participate. He even commented that this was also part of the agreement, wasn't it? The girl, with her hand on her chin, said that although it was not possible to know the exact details of the dispute, they knew that the evaluation was done in combination with HDA's notes with the cadet tournaments. PR is stopping to think. His battle experience against monsters is just mediocre. He had only fought with kobolds and had no experience fighting other cadets. He wonders what he would do since he would have to participate anyway and wanted to do it right. He ends up looking back and calling her attention, asking if she was free because he wanted her to simply train with him. She asks what the heck she was doing there. While Proda thought this was a great opportunity for Seo Yan, she is a B rank hunter. Even though B rank isn't much, she's a B rank who learned and was raised by Sword Star, so it wasn't a random B rank. He was quite curious to know how strong Seo Yan was. She asked if he was sure he wanted to do this, warning him that she was a B rank and it wasn't just anything. Proda said he was sure, got ready, and told her to go easy on him. She, holding a wooden machete, said she would let him attack first, and he could go whenever he wanted. Proda said he wouldn't refuse this opportunity and already started to move forward. She wasn't expecting much from the fight. She started to block and dodge, but thought it was still strange. The approach was really quick, but also a little clumsy. Furthermore, she said that PR's look was predictable, indicating where he would attack next time. It seems she underestimated him a little in the dungeon of kobolds. Even though he is a cadet, he was definitely a little above normal. She didn't know where this confidence to provoke and attack her like that came from. She said that in any case, the only attack would finish him off. But when she hit Proda, he surprisingly managed to defend, no matter how much he had to give. It was dangerous and difficult. She didn't want to believe that he managed to actually block an attack from her. How the heck could he block an attack full of mana? His weapon was supposed to be snatched from his hand. They continued to fight until Proda stood still for a while. He said that then he would take that fight seriously. She starts to think that his movements had suddenly changed. The attacks became faster and more precise, a huge difference from seconds ago. Proda was listening to the classes he had to make obvious attacks, so they just mixed in fake attacks. But while he was doing something wrong, his Semir ended up fighting with him, saying that he shouldn't use obvious and false blows at the same time. He had to understand that the opponent he was fighting is someone with the ability to ration and needed a different tactic. He was to throw away the thought that the opponent would just stand still and receive all of his attacks. He was to make obvious attacks. Obvious attacks are followed by obvious defenses. He was to pull the reflected spear as if swinging it back at him. He actually starts to do that, and his attacks were getting stronger and stronger. The spear teacher kept dying to repeat until the opponent is in a position in which he would not be able to block the real attack. When the time comes for everything in this attack, Proda knew it was that moment. The girl was looking at everything and said that it was very dangerous. Proda actually attacks. A strong blue explosion appears, and the girl stands still, asking what had happened. Proda had been thrown against the wall. He was all dead. She said she used her strength without meaning to and ends up calling him, asking if he was okay. Proda said yes, but he ended up losing the fight. The girl is more impressed that he thought he could beat her, even though it was a dispute between a B-rank hunter and a cadet. Proda was thinking that a hunter is always a completely different hunter than fighting monsters, so that was the difference in a professional hunter for him. He still had a long way to go. His cell phone ends up pinging. His statistics had increased. The first was 02, the second was 03, and the third was 07. PR ends up drawing the attention of the user by asking if she had a lot to do because he wanted to ask her to train with him in times when there were no raids. She is surprised by this request, saying that fighting with her could help him a lot to become stronger. She thought that her mistake in attacking with everything could have worsened the situation and caused something serious. Proda was still excited to fight her, which just shows that Proda was a little weird, but at least he was working hard. Proda starts to think that he had promised to help her, and that's why he had to get stronger. She ends up agreeing that she would do everything he asked if he won the tournament. She could even give the prize money. Proda is like, "What? Is there a cash prize?" she says. "Of course, but I don't remember much about the value." She said it was probably 100,000. For now, he imagines his spear that he could get with this money. He is already very excited and asks when this tournament would be. She is surprised that he asked the date out of the blue. She said it was about 2 weeks away. Proda is already on fire in the eyes. He already asks for a sandbag so he can punch everything. He would train. Proda takes one from the wall that was on the floor, as she had thrown him against the wall and started doing squats to train. She asked what he was doing. She ended up telling him that the training sandbag was there, etc. He thanked her. She really didn't understand anything else, while Proda just said that he would definitely put these hands in the 100,000. 2 weeks passed, and it was already the day of the tournament. Everyone there was very excited. A guy in a green shirt ends up arriving at the place. He was relieved that he finally arrived. There were more people than he was expecting there. He also starts talking to himself in the corner. Even though there are more awakened people that day, from the perspective of normal people, it was very rare to have a fight between hunters. Not to mention that the recruiters and mercenaries should be mixed in the crowd. There might even be some government officials there too. People were like, "Bro, this guy is an NPC talking to himself. Bro, what's that?" The guy said he didn't have time for this. He had to get in soon. He went to the waiting room for the participants. He was a little nervous. He didn't even know what to do since he was also alone. He was cooped up in the corner. He couldn't even move. Everyone there had brilliant quality equipment and seemed confident. He thought each academy sent its best cadets, so they all seemed very strong. One of them calls a lot of attention. It was Proda. Proda held a very old basic type weapon and still had a spear support made from random fabric. People even started saying that Proda looks like a country bumpkin. Everyone was really sorry for him, saying that he was probably forced to participate there. The boy thought, that person is definitely a colleague. He's thrilled. According to this little guy, it's like he found a new group. He didn't know anyone, so he pretended to be busy on his phone so he wouldn't be the weirdo. Man, that was really weird. He saw him and continued looking at Proda from afar. Proda said, "It looks like someone is seeing me here." The boy ended up calling Proda, saying hello. It looked like he was a cadet participating in the tournament, right? He introduces himself as Lai Ming. He was a 19-year-old natural alarm clock. PR introduces himself as King Sejong. The guy asks if he could sit on the side, but then someone shouts from the back, "Okay, making fun." The boy in the green t-shirt said that the guy who shouted was Jang because, according to him, he was one of the stars of the Go Shuri Academy. He had a very strong axe as his main weapon. Typically, like strength, he was having an argument with one of the guys there, but the little guy there who had a scar on his eye didn't like it at all. He said he wasn't going to get screwed just because he told him to. He even said that it was Jang who started this discussion. This guy was the gym's affiliate, the Shuan Mint. The boy tells Prota that this was the person Jang is fighting with, and was one of the stars of the Mint Academy. He also heard that he was a bit different. He uses twin daggers. Prota didn't understand anything else because that guy was randomly explaining all this to him, and he didn't even ask. He started to think that this guy was an NPC because it wasn't possible. The black guy simply said, "Oh, you seem to know a lot about others, don't you?" The little guy simply replies that he was just curious. When the two of them would start fighting right there, a guy with red hair ends up appearing, asking why the two of them don't keep quiet because they were the only ones in that room making noise. This guy was El Junin, affiliated with the Black Revenant Academy. Prota starts to think that it was just that guy saying everyone should shut up. The guy with glasses said he was a cadet named Junin, one of the stars of the Revenant Academy. In fact, he was the winner of that tournament. Prota is like, "What do you mean, bro? The winner wasn't a candidate." The guy explains that initially he wasn't going to participate. He said the competition was very weak. Then something happened at the gym, and Revenant decided to participate. Being a participant, his victory was certain. He asks if Prota knew the Sword Saint. Prota knew him like that, and the guy keeps saying that what they say is his granddaughter made a recruitment offer. Prota wonders if it was Seo Yan. He just continues saying that he doesn't know the reason, but they say he rejected it. To reject an offer from the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, he should have a lot of self-confidence. Maybe that's not much of a reason. The guy was pissed because he would have to participate in this tournament. According to him, this tournament was ridiculous. He began to think that if it weren't for his uncle's wish that he take them to the third league at least once, he wouldn't even be there. He commented that even if the trash wins, he would just be a little better trash. Even if he wins this competition, there would be practically nothing to gain. If he had known that this was going to happen, he would have accepted that girl's proposal. He begins to think that he may have rejected her for a nameless academy, but she is still the granddaughter of the Sword Saint. He remembers that she said he had a lot of talent and asked if he would like to join the academy. But he's like, "Bro, this gym doesn't even have one. I'm not going to join it." He starts to think that if he had used that girl, he would just enjoy the benefits and then discard her right then and there. Until he starts to look to the side because he feels something. It was Prota. The two start to look at each other. The guy even asks who they were. No one there with a random spear. He gets a little angry because there were rednecks who could participate. Prota thought he was a promising cadet that Seo Yan tried to recruit. He had a little doubt as to how many cents he would be able to level if he fought this stressed guy there. Someone comments that the first match of the academy tournament would start soon, and all the cadets were supposed to finish their preparations. The guy with glasses said it looked like they would start soon. For the last 2 weeks, Prota prepared with the aim of increasing the rate of progress of Chiron's and Xiang Yu's lectures until passing 30% at least. Although he didn't even feel a sudden increase in strength or something like that, he could feel the difference between 19% and 20% better than the difference between 20% and 21%. The experience of real life that was lacking compared to other cadets was supplied by raids and fights against hunting monsters or duels. There would be no problem. The first match was already very close to starting. Prota said that this 100k was his. He couldn't lose. The first game was the Dungeon Maze Race. Silver is quite surprised by this, while the system window said that Chiron's lecture progress rate was 31.7%. Buddha's was 6.8%, and Xiang Yu's was 33.4%.